Welcome to a trip back in time to the 1970s. It was a decade when many things we find strange or shocking were commonplace. Today we're going to look at what habits, products, and advertisements were popular in the 70s and why they seem so unusual to us now. So get ready to learn how much social norms have changed in recent decades. Imagine, in the 1970s, smoking was literally everywhere. People smoked in cafes, restaurants, airplanes, and even hospitals. Even doctors did not always warn against the dangers of smoking. Moreover, cigarette advertising was actively promoted on television, and smoking was depicted in magazines as a stylish and even healthy choice for stress relief. Such a practice seems unthinkable today. Another shocking fact is that in the 70s there were many toys that today would be considered dangerous for children. For example, clackers are two heavy balls on a string that children would swing around in an attempt to make them collide. Such toys often caused injuries, but parents didn't worry, and safety standards weren't as strict as they are today. It was a time when even the simplest toys could hide danger. The advertising campaigns of the 70s reflected clear gender stereotypes. Women were usually portrayed as housewives who had to take care of the house and cook, while men were the main breadwinners who provided for the family. Today, such advertising seems outdated and even offensive, but then it was perfectly normal. In the 1970s, many foods contained artificial flavors, preservatives, and other additives that are now considered harmful. People did not think about organic foods, and popular brands actively promoted miracle powdered drinks and foods with bright artificial flavors. For example, Tang, a powdered orange drink, was a hit even though it had little real juice. Astrological craze was very popular in the 70s. Horoscopes were printed in almost every magazine, and people read them every day to know about their day or plans. Astrology permeated everyday life, and some even made important decisions based on the advice of the stars. This was so widespread that astrological clubs became an important part of social life. In the 1970s, people were actively interested in the subject of space and UFOs. After the space achievements of the 1960s, many believed in the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Magazines published stories about UFOs, and space enthusiast clubs discussed the possibility of contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. It became part of the culture, which combined passion for science and fantasy. Today, it's hard to imagine that televisions were bulky and stood on legs, and a phone with a disc set was used to make a phone call. In the 70s, these were common household items, and many could not even imagine that one day we would be able to use compact smartphones. It was a decade of big changes, but still old technologies. In the 1970s, fast food chains began to develop rapidly and became more and more popular. Instead of cooking at home, people began to eat more often in fast food cafes such as McDonald's and Burger King. Fast food was perceived as something new and modern, and many families made these trips a weekend tradition. Today we think more about healthy eating, but in the 70s it was an exciting and even status choice. In the 70s, the cult of tanning began to actively develop, and bronze skin became a sign of health and style. Tanning in the sun or in a solarium became a real trend. People even used special oils to enhance the effect. Today we know about the dangers of ultraviolet and about the risks to the skin, but in the 70s it was fashionable and looked very natural. The topic of road safety in the 70s was very different. For example, children often rode in cars without seat belts or special seats. Cars had fewer safety features than today, and the use of seat belts was not always mandatory. Back then, it was believed that children can safely sit on the arms of adults while driving, but modern safety standards show how risky such an attitude was. In the 1970s, diet pills that promised instant results were widely used to achieve the ideal figure. Some pills contained stimulants that are now banned and had unwanted side effects. It was a fashionable but dangerous trend, as people at the time knew little about the health effects of such drugs. Today, we pay more attention to healthy eating and exercise. Polyester was extremely popular in the 1970s and was used in almost all clothing. It was cheap, did not require ironing, and held its shape well. However, polyester did not allow the skin to breathe, and clothing made from this fabric was often uncomfortable. Today, we prefer natural materials, but then polyester was a fashionable innovation, and few people thought about its disadvantages. The late 70s was a period when aerobics and exercise became popular as part of everyday life. People wore skin-tight sports clothes, did aerobics on video courses, and even started fitness clubs. This was the beginning of a healthy lifestyle as a trend that persists and today. In the 70s, there were many entertainment shows on television, and interest in the personal lives of stars led to the development of reality television. People enjoyed shows that featured competitions or funny scenes, as well as cooking shows and talk shows. This was the beginning of what is now a full-fledged entertainment industry. House record parties were an important part of social life. People gathered at home with friends, put their favorite albums on vinyl players, and danced to the biggest hits. It was an atmosphere of intimacy and true musical magic that we often lose in today's digital world. So, these were some of the things that were the norm in the 1970s, but today we find strange or even shocking. This decade of change brought many interesting trends that show how time and technology are changing our views. I hope you enjoyed this A Trip Back in Time. Subscribe for more exciting moments in history.